Hello, my name is... Oh, my nose.
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm using that one.
Hello, my name is Nathan Parrott, and I have not yet made the next indie horror film that deserves an Oscar.
I'm sorry, I ruined that one.
Don't
I
laugh.
at the beginning.
These are my
I'm
dreams.
The audio's split. We
No,
don't.
not because of what you said, but because I laughed. You and Oscar. How do we usually start? We're a podcast, Indieknots. I'm with Hayden. I'm Yannick.
Oh yeah,
We're gonna
Hayden.
We got Nathan on today.
Wait, I'm Hayden Garrett, and then I haven't made it yet. That's the podcast. This is it.
It sounds like we're running out of time.
Yeah, I would say that making it for me, realistically speaking, is owning a home in America and saying that I was able to do it with just acting and filmmaking as my job, as my career.
What about the unrealistic one?
The unrealistic goal is I'm able to become like a writer-director along the lines of John Cassavetes, where I just have like all my own friends and I like mortgage my house to make an Oscar-nominated movie and stuff like that. That's my unrealistic goal, is I work something up, you know, and then become like an indie darling who's appreciated many years from now or something like that, you know. That's my unrealistic goal.
And what's the movie? Do you have any ideas brewing up?
The movie idea? I got a couple movie ideas. I got this one that I've been thinking about called Laurie Angeles and the Death of Love, and it's about an Uber Eats driver who is a restaurant is secretly a drug front, and they're using delivery app drivers to deliver the drugs in sealed packages.
Wow, kind of like a little Scarface.
Yeah.
Uber Eats.
Yeah,
Scarface.
something. But except he's an Uber Eats driver who's a pickpocket. Yeah. Yeah, real master
tag,
of crime. He's got the market cornered. That's an idea I've had for a little bit, but I've got like a bunch of story outlines and like scene ideas for that movie, but no solid script written yet. But I've got that in the back pocket. I got another idea. I want to do like a new age horror movie, but it's like about like new age people in the woods talking about like universal truths and stuff like that. But really, it's like an extra dimensional being is like whispering in their ear and leading to that conclusion for them or something like that. But typical like cult movie. But I feel like I could make a really solid typical cult movie. The Oregon woods inspired me for that one. I got a lot of imagery in Southern Oregon that I think would be perfect for that kind of stuff.
I like that you got little sci-fi angles to these like more real world ideas.
Yeah, I think that is one of my main motivating factors. Is I think I've always really loved fantasy and specifically sci-fi more than fantasy. Honestly, I've always really liked science fiction, and I've always liked. Not when I was a little kid, but I think in high school I really started getting into like horror movies and realizing like how much that, because to me, like maybe this is like the stupid film bro thing to say, but like independent horror films are genuinely where a lot of people get their start because they're cheap to make. People are willing to fund them because there's a more guaranteed return financially on horror films. So a lot of interesting and like left field ideas get to be made in low budget sci-fi and horror that end up giving people their start because you're likely to make some money because someone's going to be willing to be, you know, paying money to see like a crappy horror film. People will consistently pay to see crappy horror films or low budget horror films. That's still true, and that's why they're still being made, you know, because I like Jamie Lee Curtis, you know, Halloween, and speaking of which, John Carpenter I think is like my biggest. I don't want to say hero because I don't like deifying people, especially as an artist. I think you should take inspiration and be honest about inspiration. I think always, but I think the idea is to pedestal someone is a bad idea for creativity, because then you're constantly weighing your own creative impulses against what you think is the perfect thing, which you should go for what you think is the best. But saying that one person or one thing is the best is, I think, limiting yourself. But with that said, I love John Carpenter. He's my hero. I love John Carpenter just because he's like the perfect example of a self-starter in the film industry, because he directed, wrote, and composed basically every one of the movies that he made. And for a lot of them was able to fund them himself with the returns from previous movies or from his own friends who had helped produce the other movies before that. That's I think John Carpenter is probably exemplary of why I like horror movies.
So you're doing acting and you're doing extra work right now.
Yeah, that's like the primary thing that I'm doing right now. This is the only period of my life where I've had where my main source of employment has been doing art stuff, obviously, because in college I was working like as a line cook and stuff like that, and my main artistic outlet was through school because I was consistently doing things in school venues. But since moving to Los Angeles, I've had pretty consistent extra gigs, and the main thing that I'm doing right now as a job is I work at like this, it's like a haunted house. It's like it bills itself as interactive theater, which it pretty much is, because we play different characters and they actually have to talk to you and stuff like that during the course of it. But it is a haunted house. It's just a very high production value haunted house with very expensive tickets. But it's actually pretty fun. It's called Delusion. It's out in Pomona. This is like the 12th year they've been doing it, I think. It's been going since like 2012. Or not 2012. It's been going on nearly a decade. I don't know. It's a long time. But it's pretty great. It's in this, like, the grounds of this old mansion from like 1868 that was built by like the former richest man in Los Angeles County, Louis Phillips. And then at some point they like moved a different mansion onto the lot. So there's the old mansion, then there's a slightly newer but much more run down mansion like on this acre lot behind the house. And so it's like you do a portion of like the intro of the story in the old house, and then you like ride in a truck to the other house, and it's a whole narrative. It's it's like the guy that made it, I found out after doing it, he's actually like a stunt coordinator for films and stuff like that. I didn't realize that. And I was like, oh, that's your main job. This is just like your fun thing you do every fall, is you come and put on like the fanciest haunted house that there is. But it's a fun gig. Pays me well above minimum wage, which I was surprised by. So for being able to say that my full-time job right now is acting in like a bougie haunted house is kind of a nice flex. I like it. I like being able to say that's my full-time job right now, and that's paying my
definitely
rent.
It changes things up a bit.
Yeah, right. No, I am a paid actor for the next couple months, even if it's not obviously big screen career building. But for that, I don't know. Part of I guess my trajectory after coming here is I've doing a lot of extra gigs. A lot of people try and seek their union eligibility through doing like SAG extra work, but I'm in a weird position because I'm eligible from a film that I was in back in like 2018, and your eligibility doesn't expire, so I still have that. So I've just like avoided auditioning for anything that's actually union, because there are like open casting calls put up for things, but I've avoided doing that so far because I just don't have like I don't have representation yet, which I need to get, I think, is the main thing.
Explain that a little bit. What is
how that works? Well, if someone says they're an agent, make sure they're in the guild, because if they call themselves an agent and they're not in the guild, they're not really an agent. Don't trust them. That's just a guy that's taking your money. Don't listen to that guy. So that is a big thing that was like very confusing, like going into which luckily I had good acting professors, and she has like a friend who has been like a guild certified talent agent for like many decades. His name's Tony Martinez. He's friends with my college acting professor, and he talked to our BFA class and gave us like a rundown on how it actually works. And he was like, yeah, basically don't trust anyone that's not in the guild if they say they're an agent. And I was like, okay, good. But a lot of people choose managers first, since agents have the I guess a more prestigious air to them. Really, in essence, they're kind of doing the same things. It's just that agents have more direct access with casting directors and the institutional elements of the Hollywood machine, I would say, as compared to managers. Managers usually seem like They can get you lots of weird things off and on. There's no certification for being a manager. There's no guild. There's nothing like that. But I have heard people have a lot of good experience with like managers because they ostensibly take a smaller they take a smaller percentage for their fee in general, which that's also a thing. If there's anyone considering becoming an actor, is they should really pay attention to is make sure if someone advertises themselves as a manager and they're taking larger than 20%, don't listen to them because that's the guild certified amount. If you are an agent, you take 20%. And so if they're taking more than that as a manager, don't listen to them.
They're screwing you over.
Yeah, they're
What
screwing
if they're
you
taking
over.
less?
We'll do it for 5%.
Yeah, I mean, if they're yeah. So there's a lot of like weird mystique around that, I feel like, and I think, I don't know, I guess there's like a lot of paranoia of like, oh no, like I'm gonna get like Harvey Weinstein or something like that, and if anything, in moving to Los Angeles, which is like, I know a lot of people that I knew in college were really worried about that, and a lot of people moving to Los Angeles are very worried about that. But there's lots of legitimate ways of getting representation. There's lots of like actual avenues. It really is just who you know. That is that people say that like it's a dirty thing, but I'm like, I don't know. That's also just how any industry would work. Is the thing, because you know, if you work in any job field, right, and you're in charge of hiring someone for a position, and a person you know is applying. Right, and you know that they're qualified, even if there may be a slightly more on paper qualified person. More often than not, you would hire the person you know just out of the sense that you're like, well, I already know they're qualified, even if they're not as qualified on paper as this other person. I know who they are. I know they're accountable. I know that like they'll get the job done the way that I want the job to be done. So it just makes sense. Because people complain about that because I think as artists, there's this sense that you're like, oh, I'm owed attention or whatever. I feel like some people like, why is there no audience for my content? And I'm like, well, no, that's the thing. You have to, it's not, unfortunately, in the money making sense, it's not a meritocracy. In the audience appreciation sense, yes, art is inherently a meritocracy because if your art speaks to more people will enjoy it. But unfortunately, that's not what decides what's made. It's what makes money that decides what's made, which you could argue market forces are a form of like the public voting with their wallet on what they want to see or whatever. But I don't know about that. I'm not the decision maker.
Yeah, totally. Well, let's back up a little bit with you just recently moved to LA, like around the same time as me, right? But maybe you've been there about 5 months or so by
yeah,
now?
very short period of time. Yeah.
Let's discuss a little bit, because I mean, it sounds like you're very knowledgeable of navigating your way through this process of being an actor. Was that just from your experience in these last 5 months, or did you have some kind of like mentor throughout the way help you out?
I would really say that I just got lucky with my collegiate experience being able to give me enough like people that had lived or worked in cities already beforehand, that they could tell you what was a good first step in any way. But one of the best things that one of my acting professors did tell me in college was that she was like, anyone that really tries to convince you they know what's going on and they know the right way to be like a creative or to be an actor, they don't know what's going on.
Yeah, don't listen to them.
Don't listen to them. Anyone that's trying to convince you there's an exact way to do it is lying to you. Because it's like, if you look at anybody's course is completely different. There's plenty of people that have won Oscars that never received any formal training, right? Where that's the thing, is art is something that is an intangible, and it's up to the individual to access that part of their brain and access that effort, I guess. So there isn't necessarily a right way, and I think I just got lucky in having people that were able to give me good advice. I would say number one thing you should do is don't take yourself seriously if you're an actor. Your job isn't to take yourself seriously. Your job is to go the extra mile for the whatever the cost of conveying the story is, and that will come across in performance and in audition. and just in your attitude as a person, you know, because someone would much rather work with someone that's easier to work with than someone that might look perfect or whatever, you know.
Yeah, totally.
And then something else I would say is you have to just consistently be submitting for things. Sign up for, because especially you can make it if you really want to, like, you could just be an extra and that will pay you more than enough money to live comfortably in Los Angeles, which is, I think people are kind of surprised by that. Even if it's like non-union jobs, if you make your materials look nice enough and you have like a good online presence in a website, I've met plenty of people who are like their full-time job is being a non-union extra, which I was really surprised by.
Yeah, not even website. It's like our roommate did that for a really long time. She just turned union, but she doesn't even have a website. She has nothing. She just did through one company.
If you got good pictures, if you more importantly, especially for some of these casting companies that I've gotten extra jobs through, the casting agents for these companies just are like, hey, you were easy to work with and like you had all your info like submitted on time. Can we keep your name for next time we need an open call for like average looking white guys? And I'm like, yeah, sure, cool. And then that has led to further extra jobs which like pay above minimum wage. So it's like, if you really want, and the thing is, these jobs aren't, in a way, like, they're not necessarily artistically cathartic all the time. There's been a couple times, I will say, if you're really searching, someone is moving here expecting to be like, oh, I'm going to be working on this and working on that. And it's like, but you do meet a lot of people on like extra gigs, but everyone is in this kind of sense of like network, but everyone is weirdly in the same boat, so it doesn't feel like they're getting anywhere, but everyone's like desperate to make it. And I'm like, listen, I'm here because this pays decently enough that I can spend a day doing this, but I don't know. I mean, I would say that it's a good way to get your feet wet and get used to like going on sets and meeting people. It is decent money too, I would say.
Yannick did a lot of extra work.
Yeah, what
a whole
extra
year.
work did you do? A whole year. What were you signed up with?
I just did central casting, and because it was free and I didn't want to do any of the other ones, and it was not a good year.
What did you not like about being an extra?
I enjoyed being an extra. I mean,
okay.
I didn't think it was particularly creatively satisfying or really satisfying in any way other than maybe a social way. But
yeah.
They also just didn't book me very much.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is there are central casting, because it's free. I have heard from a lot of people that it's not the best system. One of the best ones I've heard is, it's hard to get on this service. It's called Face to Face, but they only do extra. They almost exclusively do, I think maybe only do extra work for union projects. And I've known a couple people who signed up with Face to Face and became union through receiving vouchers after just doing that. But the way Face to Face works, that I think a lot of people like more than the others, is you submit like a full audition packet for them, where it's like you introduce yourself in a video, you have like a full set of photographs outside of just headshots, and like all your measurements and everything. And then if they decide they want to hire you, you basically become a contractor for their service. And what you do is you set your availability, you send them your monthly availability, and they're basically guaranteed to shop you out every day that you said you're available. Yeah, I've met several people who primarily use Face-to-Face and said that this is their full-time job. They just are an extra for union projects. That's all they do. And I was kind of surprised by that, but they were like, yep, I have never had trouble like being hired out on days that I said I was available. If you say you're available, they'll send you somewhere. But it is like it's like $70 a month, I think. It's pretty expensive. Yeah, it's a pretty expensive.
Like it's worth it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Which is it's weird to me that you're paying the fee kind of still, but at the same time I'm like, yeah, but that's a pretty nominal fee if you're working.
If you're getting paid, yeah.
Yeah, and especially if you become, since they still will shop you out if you become SAG, you'll just be paid the SAG rate as an extra then, right? Which is higher than a non-SAG extra on a SAG project, but that's still more than a minimum wage by a lot. But yeah, yeah.
I just like what you said about like the attitude thing. I mean, it's also kind of corny and overused, but it's totally true. I having to hire for the thing that Hayden and I are working on right now. I literally hired somebody because I liked their attitude more than somebody else who had literally had a degree in what I was hiring them for. And I feel almost guilty saying this because it's like, you know, what are we getting degrees for?
Well, no, that's a fair point.
You know, she wanted to do the job, and I could tell just based on how she was communicating over the hiring website that she wanted to do the job more than the other guy. And if somebody's qualified but just doesn't want to do it, then, you know, I'm sure they'd be great, but they just don't want to do it. So, you know,
Yannick gave her a black eye.
She has since fired herself. She'll never come back.
So Nathan, you have excuse the hippiness of me saying this, but you have a lot of passion in your speaking. When talking about acting, where does it come from? It's like, has this always been a thing?
I think I've always been creatively lended, but I never saw myself as doing, like, primarily wanting to be an artist until high school. And then the reason I've stuck with acting is because it was the first thing that I had done where, like, people of both my peers and my elders and, like, strangers would be like, hey, you should keep doing this thing. It was the first time I'd ever, because I'd done plenty of different tasks. I like played different sports or whatever in middle school and elementary school, and I'd also like done other summer camps for like other things. But this is the first time I'd ever found a thing completely on my own without being prompted to find something. I just stumbled into it because I took an acting class in high school as I needed an arts credit, so I signed up for that, and then I had never done it before, like anything theater related, and then I did that, and I was like, oh, this is kind of fun, and like my friends in the class were like, you should keep doing this, and then that spiraled into other people being like, you should keep doing this, and it made me go like, oh, like I do enjoy this. And I think I've struggled with staying to enjoy it, because while I do like, I really, in retrospect, appreciate a lot of things about my acting education in college. I think that the academic atmosphere is something that kind of stifles you being a self-starter in a lot of ways when it comes to doing creative ventures, because sometimes it can give you like a safety net to do your own thing, but in a lot of ways I feel like, especially if you're at a big institution, especially with acting where it's like everyone's waiting for the same things and then everyone's like basing their schedule around one production, right? It's hard to you kind of, for like, it felt like for 4 years I kind of turned off my own impetus to make things on my own, which I'm having to like restart kind of now, having been like I'm not even a full, I need to give myself a break because I graduated less than a year ago, but I keep like holding myself like I need to be making more on my own, I need to be doing this on my own, because I feel like I've neglected that for a while, because I would have consistently something creative I could go do, you know, with the college environment without having to like search for it, you know.
With knowing what you know right now, I mean, obviously it's been only a year, but if you had known you wanted to do acting before going to college, do you think you would have not gone to college, or do you think you would have still done it?
Oh, I don't think I would have gone to college if I hadn't found a thing that I really liked. Because I remember like when I was in middle school and starting high school. I know starting high school, I was like, because I was like a really good student in elementary school and like early middle school, and then I think I don't know, I turned 14. And then I was like, fuck this. I'm sorry. I remember I went from being like honor roll in middle school to then freshman year of high school, I was like nearly failing like 2 classes fall term. And I was like, man, what happened? I just stopped caring immediately. And I was like, I'm tired now. I don't want to do this anymore. And I don't know what it was that happened that made me decide that I didn't care about school anymore. But theater did become the thing that made me like go, oh, I guess there are people here that I like, and there's something for me to do here, and I guess the cost of having this thing is that I will complete school became kind of my mentality in high school. And I don't think I would have gone to college had I not had a thing to go to college for in actuality. And I think that a lot of times as an artist in any creative field, it's you should. I'm not blanketly saying you should go to college, because I think I think in my experience, I was lucky with the experience I got in a lot of ways. But a lot of times, I think arts school, it does suck a lot of money. I got lucky with scholarships, and I went to a very cheap school, and I still have debt, but I don't have a lot, right? The only reason I went is because I went to a very cheap school, and I had scholarships, and I knew that I wouldn't be in debt until I was, 40. I can pay off my loans in the next 10 years. It is a great school for acting. I will say that there is a lot of opportunities there to do things and find things to do with that. It's a beautiful place. Southern Oregon's a very strange place, I will say. You know, Yannick. Beautiful, and it is good for acting. They got the Shakespeare Festival there.
What do you think about the man himself, Shakespeare?
About Shakespeare? I'm conflicted. Maybe he was 5 people. No, I do like Shakespeare. I think Shakespeare's great. I mean, how can you not? It's pretty. I mean, like, I think a lot of the reasons why Shakespeare was really loved in his time aren't the reasons why we necessarily love him. Because there is a lot of like veiled political commentary in Shakespeare plays that are like direct references to things that were happening in like the English court in like the 1500s or whatever. But not all of that is blanketly true, and there are a lot of really nice, beautiful portions in Shakespeare. I've only been in 2 Shakespeare plays though. Haven't had a huge opportunity with
Othello and Macbeth.
No.
The
Tempest and Pericles. I was in the Tempest and Pericles. But Pericles may have been half written by a different guy. He like co-wrote it with someone, which is why it's not as popular in the canon. I think is because people are like, it's not a true Shakespeare play. Yes, the canon. That is the canon.
So Disney's gonna gobble them up.
Oh, the
next IP.
This Shakespeare, the Disney royal rotation. Yeah, OSF did do a thing when I think they just finished it with recently, but they had been performing all of the history plays in order over the last couple seasons. So that they had, in the ones that were like directly sequel to each other, like the Henrys, where it's like a bunch of the same characters are in the next one because it's literally about the guy's son. So they did it so that it could be like all the same actors in the rotation, because a couple of the plays do have like time overlaps or character overlaps. So that was cool.
I didn't know they connected. I thought I don't like Shakespeare at all, so I don't know anything.
Oh, you despise it? You think it's pretentious?
I despise it. Yeah.
I don't know.
No,
I hate the idea of like Shakespeare is infallible, but also I don't like that. But I think it's fun.
I think there's parts like I remember studying it in high school and like only getting about 20% of it, but the 20% that I got was like, oh yeah, this is great. Everything else just kind of flies out the window.
Yeah.
I had to put on a play in like 5th grade, and I like the first thing when I came to America was I had to put on a play with my class, Shakespeare play, and I didn't know any English, so I was like, it was like the last thing I needed was a Shakespeare play, and I was so angry.
The hardest.
This is making me so much harder.
We love working in the industry and kind of being a part of where it's all happening. But I think, at least for me, I don't want to speak for Yannick, but my true love is actually like implementing that knowledge into our little pet projects, which we did a pet project with you. As something, Mediocre Memento is, you star as, I got to remember the names even though I wrote the script.
And I'm Bennie. Bennie, yeah, I'm Bennie.
Bennie and the Jets. And the Bennie, who's in Memento, he's kind of the Teddy, the kind of crooked cop person. Kind of explain your experience with that. You brought a lot to the table, and just like what comes to mind.
Oh, thank you.
That process.
Well, first thing I was gonna say is, and this is not gassing you up, but I am saying that was one of the most creatively cathartic things I've done since I moved to Los Angeles, because there was no monetary stakes involved. There was no strangers telling you what like had to be done exactly when and where, And, you know, it was an actual creative process with people that you got to talk it through with, even in which obviously that can exist in the world in a big budget way, but it was really nice to have that, especially with friends, you know. And I think that I don't know, it was really fun. I liked the nonchalant attitude of it. We're just doing this, we're gonna make it happen, we're doing it because we want to do it. That's also a thing too, is the best art is art that's made just because you wanted to do it, even if it's not like the most like produced or like planned out thing. If you want to do it, that'll come across in why it was made, you know, that sense of joy comes across in that it was something that wanted to come into existence, you know, since it is just an idea in your head, but that'll come across in the audience for it. Yeah.
And I mean, chiming in a little bit, the way I know, I mean, I'm still cutting this up, but Yannick and I, after shooting the whole thing, we watched Memento just to see if the jokes land, and like it ruins the movie completely.
No, entirely, because
Dennard.
The Dennard, it's Dennard. Because that was the whole time. I watched Memento the day before we filmed it, and the whole time I was just imagining you doing like your like blank face stare and with your mouth open, and then just imagining you talking whenever Guy Pearce was on screen. I'm like, I can't take this seriously, because that is half the movie. It's just Guy Pearce like staring at things and going, "Oh."
I'm excited to cut it up and actually get people to watch this and ruin everybody's experience of this really phenomenal film.
Yeah, I think what you guys nailed in making this was you really got like the clear pastiche moments of the tone of Memento, which is what sells more than like the functionality of the joke writing. I think is that a parody will work best if you can nail the look or feel of the thing, which I think you guys did. It looks, which is perfect.
Well, let's not say perfect. We have a lot to work on.
You know what? I'm in it, so I'm gonna say it is.
That's why we're doing what we're doing. Like, we're just creatives coming together to create. That's the experience that at least I want to provide. And like, I'm so surprised, and I know I've said this before, but like, you're amazingly talented. We had Griffin and Tim as well, who have also been on the podcast. They're amazingly talented too, and they come over to do our stupid projects. Like, you all bring everything to the table. It's like you throw the kitchen sink at it, whatever the saying goes.
Because the stupid project is worth it, because it tickles the itch, you know. Being an extra or being a walk-on or whatever doesn't always satisfy the itch. It doesn't, because a lot of the time you have no creative input in a lot of acting scenarios for like acting jobs, which is, you know, kind of a bummer. But with this, it felt like an actual project that we were working on together, and I think that was what really satisfied me about doing it. Aside from obviously you guys being my friends, but the it being something I could actually like do, you know, and have input in, and felt like I was making something out of it rather than just following instructions. Because unfortunately, doing acting can sometimes boil down to just following instructions in a lot of the more monetarily motivated senses. I'm doing acting right now because it's the thing that I've received success in and have enjoyed so far. I think in general I want to become a filmmaker. Is my long term. I want to like I said, the course John Cassavetes did, where he worked as an actor until he had enough money and enough connections that he could convince someone to make a movie that he wanted to make, and then he just transitioned to just making the exact films that he wanted to make. And once he had the actual like clout in Hollywood to do that, I think that's the perfect course of action for me, because that is kind of what I want to do. is like, I know I can act well enough that some people are willing to pay me to do it because people have. So if I can just keep doing that long enough to like get to a place where I can go, hey, maybe you should buy this script from me and produce it or whatever, because I've proved myself a worthy commodity in some manner. But I think if you try to make yourself a career actor, especially a lot of what working actors do who aren't, in big budget television shows or in big budget films or working with like more creative directors, a lot of the time, unfortunately, if you're a working actor, you're not, and this isn't really true of live theater though. I've found that this is a lot more true of film. If you're just doing walk-ons or you're doing extra work or you're doing small bit roles, you don't have a lot of creative input, nor do you get to know anyone that you're working with, which was a disconcerting thing about set work sometimes for me. Is someone would show up, or you're there for a very short period of time, and you a lot of times don't learn what you're doing until the day of, or like right before what you're doing if you're a small thing, and then they just kind of go, all right, you're doing this thing, do it. And there's no like build up to it, and it's like an isolated little event, which can be fun, but doesn't have the same kind of, like I said, catharsis that you get from like a project that you get to work all the way through. I think that's why I like actually doing this this haunted house job is actually very fun for me, because it's been an actual creative process the whole time, where the guy that runs it and wrote the script for it and like writes the scripts every year gives us like an outline of the scenes, and then he like basically allows us to do whatever we want within the confines of what has to happen. And so everyone who's playing the different roles gets to make the character their own entirely, because there's multiple people playing different roles. Obviously, it's like a live theater production and repertory theater where there's multiple people playing the roles depending on who's performing that night or whatever. So it's like that. It's funny. I found out there's actually a giant. Because of the wealth of employable actors in the Los Angeles area, there's a bunch of big haunted houses in the Los Angeles area. I've discovered, but they've all been bought out by this one company called 13th Floor Entertainment. They own like the Haunted Hayride and all that stuff, and the Queen Mary one, which is now Shacktoberfest. They also own that. Because the Queen Mary one the boat was sinking down in Long Beach. They had a haunted house on there for decades. They've done a haunted house in Long Beach on the Queen Mary.
I actually got the tea on that because I worked on a show that filmed on it, and I got to ghost around on there for a couple weeks. But during COVID, they got the COVID money, the owners, so the locations people that work there. So take it with a locations grain of salt. Those guys are always a little shifty. Love the locations people. If anyone's listening, if nobody's listening,
why are locations people shifty? That's a pretty blanket statement.
Generalizing.
I know a place. I know a place. Come with me.
I got a location for you. You follow me, all right?
I know an empty warehouse.
They always have just a pocket full of money, like ready just to pay people off.
They always got cash.
That's true.
They're always wearing black.
They're always just like, this is your store. Yeah, here's $100. Go away.
They always have their own cars on set, not where crew parking is. Maybe I'm just jealous. But no, so the COVID gave the owners money for their employees. Like COVID gave them money, like the government gave them COVID money. Yeah. And they were like, we're just gonna take this money for ourselves. And they left to Hong Kong. They fled with it and just left everybody there to just in the dust.
Like
went bankrupt.
Probably like
all the employees,
200 people that worked for them.
The ship went to the city or some official blah blah blah. Wow. And yeah, it was really eerie because I was walking around in all the offices and everything had been left behind as if people were going to return the next day, but then 2 years passed. Weird. So there was moldy stuff in the fridge. There was voicemails on the phones. There was like merch boxes that had just been shipped that were ripped open and like a couple taken out. And then the next day they were probably going to stock them in the closet. But then that was just left there instead. Wow. And like notes, little gags, 2-year-old memes that people had printed out and like pinned against each other's desks. And it was just, it was a time capsule. And imagine all this in like a ship that's 100% haunted.
Yeah. That's like crazy.
Flickering lights.
They turned it into a literal ghost ship. Wow. Yeah.
Way spookier.
Wow. Well, it's been bailed out by like lots of what happened with COVID. Corporate hegemony was what resulted. 13th Floor has bought them out, and now and also Shaquille O'Neal helped bail them out. It's called Shacktoberfest now, and it's all like Shaquille O'Neal themed. Yeah, he because
I thought it was like Shag.
No, Shacktoberfest. It's because he apparently really liked going to the Queen Mary haunted houses back in the day, and so was really sad when it went under. So he was like, I gotta personally bail them out with this other company, which good though since it's employing a bunch of people. But yeah, better than it not existing anymore.
These haunted houses kind of sound like escape rooms, which I've recently become a big fan of. So
yeah, the one I work at is like that too. You have to like solve puzzles and figure things out as part. It's like interactive. You have like a role to play, and like all the characters you interact with are named and stuff like that. A lot of them die. Unfortunately, it is a lot of your guides will die while you're going through the house.
That's the best part.
Of the horror of it. Yeah, we shove them into a lot of dark rooms, empty rooms.
I was a guide for a haunted house thing at University of Oregon, one of the resident halls. We made our own. And
nice.
My favorite part was like I'd get a friend who was like dressed up as a zombie, and they would just randomly, so, like sometimes they would never tell me when they'd do it, but they would just grab me and take me away. And the people that I was that were like on this tour, like I wouldn't tell them where they're going, so they kind of just stand around and like, what do we do? Where do we go?
Our audiences get out of control a lot because we have a bar before they enter. I should specify the haunted house I work at. The audiences are mostly like millennials and Gen X. It's a lot of older age. It's not a lot of like teenagers and stuff like that. A lot of older people come to this one, and they have like a bar and stuff like that. So drunken people can get a little out of hand sometimes and get carried away. A lot of people like trying to arm themselves and fight back, and it's like, no, it's not real. We have some pretty sick monster costumes. The guy that built this was the day that I realized how legit the production value was. Is the guy we were looking at the costumes for some of the monsters that the guy had brought in during rehearsal, and we were like, oh wow, these look actually really sick. And they're like these big, like the Resident Evil looking like things with like extra heads and like heads on like arm puppets. So it's like the head has like spritted out of the body, and there's like the skull is on the like where the hand should be and stuff like that. They're really gnarly looking. But yeah, but the guy was talking about the suits, and then was like one of my castmates, I don't remember who it was, he was like, oh man, these are cool, how'd you get into this? And then he was like, oh, like, I've just been doing this for decades or whatever, for like movies and stuff like that. And the guy was like, yeah, what's the best suit you've ever made? And he went, definitely the OG Swamp Thing suit from the OG Swamp Thing TV show. And he was like, what do you mean, Swamp Thing? And he's like, I think he means Swamp Thing. I think he made the Swamp Thing suit. I think this is the guy that made Swamp Thing. And he was like, no way, like completely lost his shit. But it was a fun day, yeah.
It is fun where like the people that have made our inspirations are just kind of lurking around LA. You
just casually meet people. I saw Quentin Tarantino on the street a couple weeks ago, and I scared him because I was staring at him because I was like, is that Quentin Tarantino? And he's like looking in the front of like a bookstore.
Just shake his head. He's like, no, man.
No, it was worse because we were the only people on the sidewalk too. It was a deserted sidewalk, and I was walking directly at him, just staring at him. And he he's turned and looked at me, and I kept staring at him, and I'm like, that really looks like Quentin Tarantino. And then it definitely was him, and he just like held eye contact with me, and then like got freaked out because I didn't look away, and then I realized I was just staring him down, and I was like, oh yeah, no, that's an absolute freak thing to do to anyone. And so he just ran away and like went. You asserted your power. Yeah, I went too powerful for Quentin. Too powerful.
He has such a defined face too, which is like in the world.
That was the thing too. Is I went, wow, that's definitely him, and then I went, no, that is definitely him.
You should have screamed something at him like, get out of here, Quentin.
I think he was genuinely trying to go to a bookstore in a world where you could wear a mask and hydrate.
You can wear a mask. Yeah. It's LA. You can wear sunglasses.
Yeah, at all times.
He's just keeping his face out there. I guess just wrapping this up, talking to Nathan 10 years ago, what would you tell him?
What would I tell Nathan 10 years ago? What was I when I was 14 at the start of high school? Yeah, what would I tell Nathan at the start of high school? Don't take yourself so seriously. Go on walks in public places, because it's nice to meet strangers, and you'll find a lot of joy in that. It's worth it to do things just so that you can say you did them. You know, you don't always have to have documentation of it. You don't always have to make money off of something. Yes. It's worth to do things if it feels like it's the right thing to do. In regard to making things, in regard to art, it's worth it to do it regardless. Because I think I'm a very I would argue people would call me a communist. I think I don't think of myself that way, but I think in a lot of ways, art in its purest form is a resistance to all of the intrinsic things that we're like forced to do in our life. Mm-hmm. I think in a lot of ways, and it's because it's a pure expression, and it doesn't mean anything outside of itself. You know, if it speaks for itself, it's what exists, and you made it because you could. And it's a very human thing to do. That I think the fact that art is what that is neglected a lot. So yeah, do it just because you can. Especially as doing creative stuff, like I'm always slipping into how can I make money of this. With this, you know, sometimes you just gotta. You need to remind yourself that you don't need to. Yeah, there's other ways to make money if you really need money. Right. Like, Hayden, let's just once every 2 weeks, you know, we just talk for an hour. And then Hayden was like, let's make a podcast out of it. You know, it always creeps in.
Oh, no.
He won't talk to me anymore unless we're recording.
The medium of our communication rocks to its core.
This
what
is the first time
you stand on.
But okay, I have another one before we end. Yeah. Those are 3 things for your past. What you would have told yourself 10 years ago. What about 3 things that you would want to hear yourself say 10 years from now, if you were to listen to this again? If my future self appeared in the room right now and told me some a message to your future self. To tell you about the what would I say to my future self? Like if you're listening to this podcast in 10 years, here's the message for that guy. Don't forget where you came from. That's hard. Don't do it just because of the names associated with it. That's a big one too. Cloud chasing is never good. And drink more green tea instead of coffee.
Oh yeah.
I think that's important because it makes me jittery.
You're getting an email in 10 years.
Well, thank you so much, Nathan, for being a part of our wonderful Indieknot Films, and 2, being a part of this podcast and kind of going into who you are and what's your story.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. And it's been a good time.
3 more nice things about us, and then how humble we are.
I mean, these guys are the best guys. I
don't want to hear this. I don't want this.
You invited these kind of gifts. I would say you guys are really doing something fun in a direct, small scale way. You're giving people chances when they need them most, and that is the greatest thing you can do to another artist.
That's like telling someone, I like how you can wear anything.
I do love how you can wear anything.
And then also how humble we are.
Yannick and Hayden are definitely the humblest of the humble. You're definitely playing down your own achievements quite a bit here. Give yourself some credit, guys.
Thank you.
Great. We hope to get you in some more things.
Of course. I'm more than willing. Based on what I have said on this podcast, it's on the record now. So if I'm not in more things, you can hold me to it.
Legally,
but off the record, are you down?
Yeah, off the record, I'm very down, of course.
Okay. Super down.
And put that on the record.
All right, back on the record.
That's all right. See ya.
Yeah, have a good night, guys.
You have to do a wild line of me saying bye because it's always so awkward. I don't say bye.
You want to do it? Do it right now.
Bye. Should I do a couple? Let me do a. Let's do a series.
Do a couple. Oh no, I'm just putting this whole thing in.
Bye, Nathan. Bye. See ya. God bless ya.
One of my favorite jokes in Mediocre Memento was, it's so stupid. Dennard.
Dennard?
And how did we even get
to Dennard?
It was Nathan's idea.
God, what a genius.
Because in Memento, for people who haven't seen it, Lenny, played by Guy Pearce, he always, anytime someone said, like, referred to him as Lenny, he would be like, oh, it's actually Leonard. And my character, Bennie, who is supposed to be just Lenny, Nathan thought it would be funny of like, what if every time someone says Denny, he'd be like, oh, it's actually Dennard.
Didn't he naturally improv that doing a take?
Yeah, he told me in between takes that it's like, hey, you should do this. And I was like, that is phenomenal. It's just kind of proves his
how committed he is. Because did you watch the movie writing this?
Well, yeah. In writing, I wrote the script like a year ago, and I was like religiously watching it.